Good morning. Let us settle into a spirit of worship with a moment of silence, followed by our prelude this morning, the theme from Schindler's List by John Williams. You are also invited to light a silent candle of joy or sorrow at this time.
Blessed are we who gather with open hearts together in this space today. Blessed are we, the chalice lighters of resistance, justice, love, and faith. Blessed are we, the heretics, the outcasts, the walkers of our own way. Blessed are we, the border crossers, the refugees, the immigrants, the poor, the wanderers who are not lost. Blessed are we, the transgressors, the trespassers, the passers-by, the cause takers, the defiant, and the compliant. Blessed are we, the hand extenders, the sign makers, the protesters, the protectors. Blessed are we, the trans women, the trans men, the non-binary, the cisgender, the multigender, and the no gender. Blessed are we, the friend, the stranger, the lonely, the hidden, the visible, the authentic. Blessed are we who rise in solidarity. Blessed are we who cannot. Blessed are we who do not. Blessed are we, for this is our beloved community, and this is who we are.
The piece that we're going to sing is a piece that is in Hebrew. And since some of you might not know Hebrew, I thought that it would be useful to say what the words mean. The world is sustained by three things: by truth, by justice, and by peace.
Good morning. Welcome. Ooh, that's lovely. Let's do that one more time. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Worcester, a congregation of love, hope, and justice, inspiring people to take on the challenges of a changing world. My name is Wendy O'Leary, and I am one of your worship associates this morning. I hope that you'll also join me after coffee hour as I offer a program for all ages on self-compassion. We'll talk a little bit about self-compassion, do some activities to help grow more self-compassion in our lives. I'll also share a little bit from my new book on self-compassion called It's Okay, Being Kind to Ourselves When Things Feel Hard. I think we could probably all use a little bit of being kinder to ourselves when things feel hard. So I hope that you'll join me. We begin by acknowledging that in Worcester, Massachusetts, we work, learn, live, and worship on the seized ancestral homeland of the Nipmuc people who survive and remain active as Nipmuc Nation. We offer a special welcome to those of you who are new or visiting with us for the first time this morning. We're delighted that you're here. We hope that you will join us in Fellowship Hall following the service for refreshment and for conversation. If you have any questions or desire more information about this service or any of the ministries and programs of this congregation, please do not hesitate to ask. We invite you to fill out one of the cards found in the pews. These cards can be placed in the offering plate or given to one of the ushers or greeters this morning. For those of you joining us online this morning, we offer you a very special welcome. For safety purposes and so that we might come to know you better, as you are able, please place your name on your video feed. Please now take a moment to sign one of the attendance clipboards that are being circulated. It should be going around. And though you're not obligated to sign, we do appreciate your information and will use it only for church purposes. During the service, we offer an opportunity to share a brief personal joy or sorrow. If you would like yours to be read aloud by the minister, please print it on an index card in the pew and drop that in the collection plate when it comes around. These cards will also be posted outside the minister's office to be shared with our friends at other services. For those online, you can now place a joy or sorrow in the chat, and we will share it during this time in the service. In the foyer, there are listening devices and large print service programs and hymnals for those who may find their assistance beneficial. Please see one of our ushers who will be pleased to assist you. I invite you now to turn your technology to worship mode. And finally, please note the announcements on the back of your program. There will be time for short verbal announcements following the postload. We are so glad that you're here and hope that this morning is an opportunity for rest, for reflection, and for rejuvenation.
Our opening words this morning are by Amanda Gorman. They are entitled Hymn for the Hurting. Everything hurts, our hearts shadowed and strange, minds made muddied and mute. We carry tragedy, terrifying and true, and yet none of it is new. We knew it as home, as horror, as heritage. Even our children cannot be children, cannot be. Everything hurts. It's a hard time to be alive and even harder to stay that way. We're burdened to live out these days while at the same time blessed to outlive them. This alarm is how we know we must be altered, that we must differ or die, that we must triumph or try. Thus, while hate cannot be terminated, it can be transformed into a love that lets us live. May we not just grieve, but give. May we not just ache, but act. May our assigned right to bear arms never blind our sight from shared harm. May we choose our children over chaos. May another innocent never be lost. Maybe everything hurts, our hearts shadowed and strange. But only when everything hurts, may everything change.
Hi, I'm Mara Pentlarge, and I'm going to give you the 8th principle moment. The 8th principle, we have 7 principles. They're on cards in your pews. And the eighth principle is an idea that we're going to say explicitly that we're anti-racist. You can get that from the first 7 principles, but you can also not really notice it. So this is saying explicitly that we'll work to end racism and other forms of oppression, which is also a good idea. And following on what Diane said, it gets harder before it gets better. What did you say? Yeah. We're going to take a vote on it at the annual meeting, whether this church is going to adopt the 8th principle, which I expect everybody will say yes, but you don't have to. And the real work is changing how we feel and how we act. And the president of our association in the UU world, Susan Fredrickson Gray, wrote about it in her column. She says, "Our faith has grown through answering the call to dismantle white supremacy culture." I have not heard white supremacy culture said out loud. Maybe it has, but I'm glad. It needs to be said. It's true. Our country has white supremacy culture. Our faith has grown through answering the call to dismantle white supremacy culture and deepen our practices of beloved community. You know, acting towards everybody as if they were us. It's shaping and changing us in powerful and beautiful ways. And for this, I am grateful. Because in this world where so much is unsettled, we need communities willing to remain unsettled, willing to lean into the creative, challenging, sometimes messy, and powerful growth-filled space of faithfully becoming prophetic, life-saving, and justice-making ministries. The way that I've found most beneficial for changing my own head is thinking about the times where I've had interactions with people of color or thought about, and then processing it, talking with somebody else about how it was, in hopes of just coming to a more rational feeling about it, more clear thinking. Because there's a million little interactions and they mess up our thinking. It's not our interactions with people, it's the messages that we get from the news, from other media, from other people. The New York Times did a study where they counted all the pictures of people who had been arrested for crimes, and they found it was skewed. There was way too many Black pictures in there of people who had just been arrested. They hadn't been convicted. And they realized, oh golly, we're doing it. We didn't mean to be doing that. So they kind of vowed that they were going to put pictures of white people who had been arrested for crimes, you know, in proportionate numbers. It just is constantly comes at us. One Black man on TED Talk said, doing anti-racism work is like brushing your teeth. You have to do it every day. It just keeps coming at you. It keeps coming at you. So that's what we're proposing will happen with this church, our church, so that we can stand up for anti-racism work in this city and wider areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. Would you please join me in our opening hymn, number 1051, found in your teal hymnal supplement, We Are. That's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our ancestors' prayers. We are our grandfathers' dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and wisdom of ages. We are our mother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of love, builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers. We are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings the universe who we are. Each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. Please be seated. We come to that time in our service when our youngest among us bring their baskets of change for change through the sanctuary. This is a weekly opportunity for our religious exploration program to participate in the care of our community through providing funds for the emergency fund of the congregation, the minister's discretionary fund. If you would raise your hand if you have change this morning that you'd like to contribute, and one of our youngest will find you. In the back. Don't forget everyone in the back and on the sides. Couple more. All right, and you can bring your baskets forward to me. Thank you so much. And I'll invite our youth to attend their Sunday religious exploration classes at this time. You can bring your baskets toward me. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now, thank you. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. Carrots and celery just won't do. A poem that was found on a piece of lined paper torn from a notebook dated September 3rd, 1943, entitled Homesick, author unknown. I've lived in the ghetto here more than a year, in Terrotzen, in the Black Town now. And when I remember my old home so dear, I can love it more than I did somehow. Home. Home. Why did they tear me away? Here the weak die easy as a feather, and when they die forever. I'd like to go back to home again. It makes me think of sweet spring flowers. Before, when I used to live at home, it never seemed so dear and fair. I remember now those golden days, but maybe I'll be going there again soon. People walk along the street, you see at once on each you meet that there's ghetto here, place of evil and fear. There's little to eat and much to want, where bit by bit it's horror to live, but no one must give up. The world turns and times change, yet we will all hope the time will come when we will go home again. Now I know how dear it is, and I often remember it. Amen. We come to that time in our service now when we are given an opportunity to share that which is symbolic of our own values, our own work in the world. Oh, what did I forget? Oh, stewardship. Thank you. You get to do it. So many people, so few spots, you know.
So are you ready to hear some good news? I'm Dave Showalter, and I'm on the Stewardship Committee. And I just want to point to this beautiful graphic here and this chalice that this community has lit. You can see there that our pledge amount is now at 199,000 out of 211,000. And there's a nuance here that I need to just briefly explain, in that there's also a different category of people who've requested gifts from their 401k that we're now tracking separately, which we should have been doing for years. That's about $12,000 that's come in that way. So if you add that, we are at about 211,000 exactly, just over that amount actually. So we've more than met our goal when you include that. So thank you to everybody. And I do also want to point out that the goal is actually different than the need. So there's a subtle difference there. We set a goal this year that we thought was realistic. We've struggled to make it above 200,000 for years and years and years. So I don't want to take away from how pleased we are. But in terms of not taking more from our endowment than we should be, and paying our staff a living wage and all of that, we can always use more. So it's not too late to pledge if you haven't done so. We need every cent that we can get. But I am ready to give our total to the board But I want to thank the rest of the stewardship team, the connections team, which has been wonderful in reaching out to newer folks, but most of all to this community and this congregation. Thanks so much. And so now, in that spirit, our morning offering can now be received.
What he said. Hey, Sue, hold up that for a moment. Yes. So one of the things we don't talk about in the congregation is the fact that our pews come from the 1950s, but our butts don't. Most of them. Some of them do, not all of them, right? But we have 4 or 5 of these wonderful cushions that we purchased a few years ago. So if you need something in order to survive the pews, I hope that you will take advantage of them. And I want to just drop this as a seed. Perhaps some of our sewers would consider working with us to conceive of a project where we figure out how to purchase and build cushions for each of the pews. Just thinking outside the box for a moment and anticipating that I might in fact desire them at some point. So let's not forget the seat of power up there as well, just saying. So I want to begin our time of joy and sorrow this morning and invite you to come forward if you have joys or sorrows, to share them in the midst of this company that claims you as a co-journeyer, by forming lines on either side of the sanctuary and then coming and speaking to the microphone, telling us first who you are and then lighting a candle if you so desire, We'll turn it around today, and I want to invite those who are online, if you have a joy or sorrow to share, to go ahead and place it in the chat. I see that Linda Rich has a joy this morning. Dear friends, thank you so much for your calls and your emails and your cards and your visits over the last period of time since my knee replacement a couple of weeks ago. Your love and care is surely the biggest part of my speedy and complete recovery to come. Love you all, Linda. Laura Lenahan writes, after a brief illness, my grandson is not only back to his silly self, but we are going to enjoy a Jurassic World at the DCU Center today. Are there other joys or sorrows to share this day?
Good morning. I'm Mary Fitton, and many of you know me, but there's some lovely new faces who I'm pleased to meet. About 2 years ago, I moved to Athol, which is north and west. So you don't see me as frequently. It takes me about an hour to get here, but I am committed to coming once a month. But anyway, the joy that I wanted to share was that yesterday morning I had the opportunity to attend a special Founders Day ceremony for Spelman College. And HBC is 142 years old, and the founders are two women, Harriet Giles and Sophia Packard, and their graves, they are buried together, is in Athol, of all places. Okay, imagine my surprise. And basically, they met when they were, one was a teacher and one was a student. And in 1881, they just, up here in Worcester, they met in Worcester. In 1881, they decided to leave everything behind, go down to Atlanta, Georgia, and open school for Black girls and women. And that school is still going strong. One of the things that they were able to accomplish is that they would go out on fundraising missions to different churches and speak there. And they spoke in front of John Rockefeller, who was very impressed with their work and gave a large donation that helped them to buy the land and pay off the mortgage and all that. And his wife's name was Laura Spelman. And hence, that's how the college became known as Spelman College. But she and her family had been longtime abolitionists. So that is the connection. So it was lovely to be there and meet some of the alumni who, this is their second annual decision to come and lay a wreath at the grave in Athol. So I'm hoping that next year, right around this time, it'll be the third annual. So thank you.
Cheryl Lachey writes, I'm so pleased to share that I managed to complete 1 mile in the walk to find a cure for MS. Thank you for your support and encouragement.
Right. I was thinking the other day, actually my granddaughter mentioned it to me, that on the 13th was the anniversary of my my heart surgery, and on the 14th was my anniversary of my marriage. Last year, after my heart surgery, I missed it. I missed my anniversary, I missed my birthday, I missed 7 weeks. And I was thinking the other day as I was sitting out on looking at this beautiful springtime and seeing all the trees answering the call of spring, you know, to awake, you know, for the sap to get up, and that there are a few trees out there that have not yet answered that call. And I was thinking to myself that last year I was one of those trees that didn't answer that call of springtime and kind of missed the whole thing. I don't want to kind of get into that, but except to say that it's been 1 year, and I feel free. I feel free of any kind of leftover from that. So if I never mention it again, please don't worry about that. I do, however, I have to actually say how much, I don't think I had the same regard for doctors and nurses and people in the healthcare industry, physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychotherapists, and nurses, nursing assistants, and just the extensive amount of care that they provide to people, and all the love and care that they provided. And I just have to kind of publicly acknowledge that, even as I acknowledge that I hope never to make their acquaintance again. But I will light a candle today in their honor.
Still on short. So I am Liz, and I have a prayer request for my Uncle Mike because he has been put in the ICU after a fall. And he looks after my other uncle, Uncle Jack, who has physical and mental disabilities. So now my family is running around like chickens without heads, trying to like take shifts visiting Uncle Mike in the hospital and looking after Uncle Jack. So for that. And then also, I just like to share a quick story for the 8th principle. I don't know if I am able to vote on it because I haven't officially joined yet. But I grew up in this neighborhood, and 4 years ago, I was holding a sign that I was peacefully protesting on the sidewalk, anti-Trump, because he was going after Obamacare. And this man who lived across the street from me comes over and starts harassing me. He calls me a nigger, and he accuses me of not living there. And I told him my family has been here probably longer than him. And he didn't believe me. He had the cops called on me after circling around me with his entire family. It would have been more intimidating if they weren't his grandchildren they were training. But still, 4 cops showed up. 4 for me. So this really does happen here. So I just it means a lot that you guys are considering this, and it really does, like, right up that street on Lansing Ave, it happened. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, I'm Kim. I went yesterday to the memorial service of one of my professors from college, and I was surprised to find that was like 30 years ago, but I saw several of my college friends and celebrated the day, the beautiful weather we had, with Adele's Lemonade, which just brought back a lot of memories. So I would like to say a blessing and a prayer for the family of Bill Hutchinson, affectionately known as Doc, from Rhode Island College. And the second thing is, when Ken and I restarted the game night, we said it was going to be the first Friday of the month. That is not true. It is a Friday of each month. I'm going to have to change the little logo because the first one we did was February, and that was the second Friday, and then March was the first Friday, and April was the second Friday, and May will be the second Friday, I'm announcing now, but June will be the first Friday because we can't bump into the yard sale. So for the 25 to 30 people that has shown up every time, and they are different people sometimes, we had a blast. We were in the classrooms this time. We made it work. We had 30 people playing games between the 2 classrooms. We had food, we had games, we had fun, 2.5 hours. Please join us next time. We will be in Fellowship Hall so we can have more than 30 people, but it's a lot of fun. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Laura Rosbach, a newer addition, and I'm so grateful that my son Griffin is here today and that I get to sing with the awesome choir, and I love Matthew, so all so many joys. I'm also very much remembering Virginia Tech shooting April 16th, where my husband and my brother-in-law were on campus that day. And I worked in the town, and there were SWAT teams, and there were 32 beautiful people were just killed so senselessly with gun violence, and they were all shades. There were some very, very awesome, smart, worldly people that were just gunned down by a person that really needed mental health care and had access to guns. So mostly I wanted to light a candle for the 32 people that were killed that day and know that I am remembering them, so that hopefully we can all keep remembering that we need to work to keep guns out of people's hands for such senseless tragedy to occur, which, you know, just keeps happening, and we're getting a little bit more numb to it. When that hit us there in our community, it was still pretty shocking, and, you know, we always are shocked, but at the same time, we're getting used to it. So I hope everyone can keep, you know, voicing that we have to keep working together. Thanks.
Is it going to bite me?
Someday we'll actually get the stand and the microphone to work in sync. There you go.
So I have a joy. Yesterday, our food pantry served over 200 and I think it was 202 people, over 60 families. And we have such an incredible team. I wonder if everyone who is involved and has been involved would stand, please.
There you go.
We are delighted that we can do so much to help our families. We wish we didn't have to. We wish there wasn't such a need, and it grows always. But anyway, thank you.
Let us be, well, before we head into prayer and meditation, I note that Karen Stephen has asked to share good morning. I can't write on Facebook. Can you just say good morning to the congregation? So good morning, congregation. And hugs to Mara and Steve Ober, so from Karen Stevenson. Let us be in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, source of that which is most within and without. We come this day remembering lives that have been lost senselessly, and take up the call to protect the lives that we cherish. For all life is cherishable. We come this day remembering anniversaries and lives well lived. We come this day celebrating our families and spring and the return of life and health and wholeness. We come in gratitude for the service that we offer others as we embrace them as an integral part of the communities to which we belong. And remind ourselves that resistance is memory, our capacity to recall and to embrace and to be part of something larger than ourselves. We come with breath, with the ability to remember ourselves in the midst of a chaotic world, and in that, to ground ourselves in a larger reality, the presence of beloved community, a love that will not die and cannot be killed, and our capacity to be compassionate beings. Amen. And blessed be. So we're going to try to do the short version of the 12-page sermon this morning. It's been a muddled experience this week. Finding myself frustrated behind a school bus that is stopped in the middle of an intersection, letting students off, and reminding myself that that is actually the safest place for them to be. That tempered by a NPR news report about the same time of a kindergarten teacher in Ukraine that is looking at the still full lockers of students that are now scattered across Europe, tending to them occasionally online, working through the heartache of missing her family, all of them. It's a muddled experience to rise early in the spring, on a spring morning, and awaken to a fresh breeze, 92-degree heat, the slight scent of flowers in bloom, and the sun beginning to peek over the horizon of trees, to be bathed for a moment in the newness of it all, and to be glad in that. But then only to turn on the television and meet the news of the day about another shooting, another scandal, acts of bravery and cowardice, another day of economic insecurity, the rising evictions, and less assistance for those on the edge of our communities. Our poets this morning bring us to this moment as well. Everything hurts. Our hearts shadowed and strange, minds made muddled and mute. We carry tragedy, terrifying and true, and yet none of it is new. We knew it as home, as horror, as heritage. Even our children cannot be children. And then, when I remember my old home so dear, I can love it more than I did somehow. Ah, home, home, why did they tear me away? The words of poets this morning bring us again to this day when we honor the lives and loves of those who perished and prophetically witnessed against the horrors of the Holocaust, Yom HaShoah. It's a date in history that dates back to 1949 when the chief rabbinate of Israel designated the 10th of Tetev, then December 28th, as a traditional day of mourning and fasting in the Hebrew calendar. The day included the burial of the ashes and remains of Jews that were killed in the Flossenburg concentration camp and included religious ceremonies to honor those who had died. In 1951, the Israeli Knesset chose April 12th, 1951, the 27th day of Nisan in the Hebrew calendar as Holocaust Remembrance Day in honor of the day the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising began in 1943. The day falls a week after Passover and 8 days before the Independence Day of Israel. For me, the importance of this day is made clear by the reality that there continue to be a rise in those who want to deny the Holocaust. In 2022, the United Nations and the World Jewish Congress asked researchers at Oxford University to identify and analyze social media posts about the Holocaust. Researchers identified more than 4,000 such posts on Facebook and Instagram and Telegram and TikTok and Twitter. What do you suppose they found? They found that Holocaust denial and distortion is widespread in the Telegram platform, a social media platform which is widely used in Eastern Europe. Nearly half of all Holocaust-related public content on this platform denies or distorts the facts. The Oxford researchers also found that this rate rises to more than 80% for messages in German and around 50% in English and French. Furthermore, posts on the Telegram easily accessible to people looking for Holocaust-related information on the platform are often explicitly anti-Semitic. Even on moderated platforms, right? Denial and distortion are present, but to a lesser extent, the research reveals. According to the report, 19% of Holocaust-related content on Twitter, 17% on TikTok, 8% on Facebook, and 3% on Instagram all contained distortions and inaccuracies. The researchers also identified that perpetrators have learned to evade content moderation through the use of humorous and parodic memes as a strategy intended to normalize anti-Semitic ideas and make them appear mainstream. The strategy of normalizing anti-Semitism is not new. One need only look at the way in which the Nazis co-opted the Christian church in the lead up to the Second World War to see how insidious this process can be. In the introduction to his book, Preaching in Hitler's Shadow, Sermons of Resistance in the Third Reich, Dean Stroud describes how pro-Nazi preachers and others went about aligning religion with anti-Jewish program of the Third Reich. He writes, when the 85-year-old president of the German Reich, Paul von Hindenburg, handed the German government over to Adolf Hitler on January 30th, 1933, he presented Germans with more than a new political leader. He gave Germans a new religious leader as well. Although we do not think of Hitler primarily in religious terms, he seems to have thought about it, how Christians would view him and his National Socialism. He would never have called himself a preacher, but he certainly did not hesitate to reference God and to suggest divine support for his Reich. In fact, says Stroud, He made more references to God and to Christianity during the first 8 weeks following his appointment as chancellor than any time thereafter. Getting off on the right foot with Christians in Germany was certainly an early priority. Stroud continues, 2 days after becoming chancellor, Hitler delivered a radio speech in which he asserted that God had removed his blessings from Germany because Germans had disobeyed him by surrendering to Germany's enemies in 1918. Hitler enlisted the Christian God as a divine endorsement for his own nationalism. The new Führer then linked his nationalistic view of Christianity to the Nazi program for the future. He assured his listeners that the new government regards Christianity as the foundation of our national morality and the family as the basis of national life. Anyone heard that before? Hitler identified his nationalistic understanding of Christianity with the foundational institutions in German society. The new Führer ended his address with a prayer. May God Almighty give our work his blessing, strengthen our purpose, and endow us with wisdom and the trust of our people, for we are fighting not for ourselves, but for Germany. We should notice his wedding of a militant and nationalistic faith to a militant and nationalistic political program. We are fighting. And further, says Stroud, to illustrate that Christians in Germany had nothing to fear from Hitler and the Nazis, members of the Nazi SA streamed into churches all over the Reich in the weeks following the swearing in of the new chancellor. Photographs abound of uniformed SA troops worshiping in churches. In many churches, these hordes of Nazis in their own uniforms received a warm welcome. These were the first heady days of euphoria for a defeated and beleaguered populace who wanted a restored nation and a sense of pride. At Magdeburg, the cathedral became a forest of swastika flags. And the pastor there told his congregation that the twisted cross of Nazism had become a symbol of German hope. Whoever scorns this symbol scorns our Germany, he said. Early on in 1933, says Stroud, Hitler still had to concern himself with Christian response to his new government, and therefore it was not surprising that he did all he could to assure both Protestants and Catholics of his goodwill toward them. The Nazi program was about establishing what it called positive Christianity, which the Nazi platform in 1920 described as fighting the spirit of Jewish materialism within us and without us, and it is convinced that a lasting recovery of our folk, or in German, Volk, can only take place from within, on the basis of the principle public needs come before private greed. Gemeinnütz geht vor Einnütz. Stroud notes, profoundly vague and threatening at the same time, the idea of positive Christianity allowed the Nazis to attack whatever aspect of Christianity they deemed negative. Negativity in Nazi Germany was anything that emphasized the individual's unique worth and dignity over the Nazi herd. That's important to remember. Negativity in the Nazi Germany was anything that emphasized the individual's unique worth and dignity over the Nazi herd. Negativity in Nazi Germany was anything that suggested that Jews were human beings created by God and loved by God. Negativity in Nazi Germany was anything that did not fight Jewish materialism, whatever that might be, or put the state's well-being before the individual's. Stroud notes, thinking for oneself and nonconformity were strictly forbidden. Christians had to conform to Nazi ideology if they wanted to be seen in a positive light. Yet the most sinister aspect of this, says Stroud, was that it made Christianity a racial religion. I'm going to go back to our eighth principle moment this morning. Everything in Nazi Germany was racist, for Nazi Germany was a state based solely on racism. We cannot overemphasize, says Stroud, the importance of race in all things Nazi. It is therefore essential to notice how preachers treat race, either directly by mentioning it or indirectly by intentionally ignoring it. It is vital to note how the sermons refer to Jews and Judaism in the Old Testament. Along with tying racism to Christian faith, the program made it clear Nazis would be the sole interpreters of what form of Christianity Germans could practice. Any criticism of the state or the Nazi persecution of Jews was considered negative Christianity. To resist this effort by the Third Reich to co-opt Christianity, even though much of the Christian church followed along with the program, is what then constituted negative Christianity. Stroud notes, if Christians engaged in negative Christianity, they could be put to trial in a special court. One such trial occurred in Schwerin, Germany, and involved pastors who had written or signed a series of circular letters from the summer of 1933, early in the program. They'd signed them between the summer of 1933 and the spring of 1934. Nazi authorities found it objectionable. In particular, communication titled "Our Non-Posthumous for the Sake of Christ Church," written in February 17, 1933, the pastors announced that while obedience to the state was required of Christians, obedience could be limited in the case of the present church situation. Since Nazis could not allow such freedom of expression, the special court was formed to deal with the offending clergy. Evidently, the pastor's reflections on Romans 13:1, now pull out your Bibles. Right? Romans 13:1, let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those authorities that exist have been instituted by God. So says Paul in Romans. That this particular verse had not been positive enough for for Nazis. The trial took place in 1934 in June. The charge was that the pastors had insulted the Nazi state by implying that the state was interfering with church relations. One pastor was sentenced to 6 months in prison, another 4 months, still another 3, and 2 others were given stiff fines. Interestingly, the charges against one man were dropped, although he was guilty, because he had spent a large part of his life abroad and did not understand very well the situation in Germany. The trial, says Stroud, made the totalitarian claim on Christian life in the new Germany clear to all. Those who continued to resist this positive Christianity of the Nazi regime were identified as belonging to the confessing Christian church movement in Germany. The best known of those resistors was a pastor named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who Stroud notes in 1940 was like so many other pastors and was officially banned from preaching and speaking in the Third Reich. Soon after, he joined a small group of conspirators whose chief goal was to murder Adolf Hitler and negotiate an end to the war, primarily with England. As a part of this activity, the group was able to rescue a few Jews from the Nazi terror. Bonhoeffer's work, says Stroud, with this group allowed him and others in his circle to have first-hand knowledge of the severity of Hitler's policy against the Jews. Certainly, this information only increased his sense of obligation for personal sacrifice, for it was for this oppressed minority. His willingness, that is Bonhoeffer's willingness to join what became the July 20th plot, was foreshadowed in an essay entitled "The Church and the Jewish Question," which he wrote in the early days of the church struggle. He had been greatly disappointed by the timidity of the confessing church in the face of Nazi persecution of Jews. At the time of the another confession, Bonhoeffer was serving as a pastor of a German-speaking church in London. Although absent, he followed the developments of the confessing church closely, and the Barmen confession pleased him in its radical affirmation of the unique lordship of Jesus in the church, but its silence in the face of Nazi persecution of the Jews disappointed him. There was increasing violence against Jews, certainly, that influenced his shift in thinking from pacifism to violent resistance. He had spent time at Union Theological School and had befriended a number of theologians that were talking to him about the program of nonviolence of Gandhi and others. But after his arrest in 1943, Bonhoeffer continued to model courage. Prison offered new opportunities to practice obedience to his faith in the midst of great suffering and danger, and even torture. His writings from prison, published as letters and papers from prison, have equaled his book on discipleship in popularity. By special orders of Hitler, Bonhoeffer was hanged on April 9th, 1945, just days before Germany surrendered. On February 26, 1933, in the early days of the rise of the Nazi regime, Bonhoeffer preached in part the following. And he said unto him, O Lord, wherewith shall I have Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Messiah and Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said unto him, Surely I will be with thee, and thou shalt smite the Midianites as one man. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give to the Midianites into their lands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me. Bonhoeffer writes of this passionate story about God's derision of all those who were fearful and have little faith, all those who are too much careful, who are much too careful, the worriers, all those who want to be somebody in the eyes of God but are not. It is a story of the divine's mocking human might, a story of doubt and faith in God who makes fun of human beings, who wins them over with his mockery and with his love. So it is no rousing, heroic legend. There is nothing instead of, it is a rough, tough, not very uplifting story in which we are all being roundly ridiculed along with him. And who wants to be ridiculed? Who can think of anything more humiliating than being made a laughingstock by God? The Bible often speaks of God in heaven making fun of our human hustle and bustle, of God's laughter at the vain creatures he has made. Here it is, the powerful sovereign one whose strength is equaled, the living Lord who carries the way about his creatures, carries on about the way of his creatures. For him who has all power in his hands, who speaks a word and it is done, who breathes forth his spirit and the world lives, or takes it away and the world perishes, who dashes entire nations to pieces like potter's vessels. For this God, human beings are not heroes, not heroic, but rather creatures who are meant to do his will and obey him, who he forces with mockery and with love to be his servants. So that's why we have Gideon, because this doubter mocked by God has learned his faith in the school of hard knocks. And then he says something very profound, but you have to understand it in the context of Germany at the time. In this church, he says, we have only one altar, the altar of the Most High and the one and only, the Almighty, the Lord, whom alone we honor and praise, the Creator before whom all creation bows down, before whom even the most powerful are but dust. We do not have any side altars, says Bonhoeffer, at which to worship human beings. The worship of God and not humankind is what takes place at the altar of our church. Anyone who wants to do otherwise should stay away from and cannot come to us in this house. Anyone who wants to build an altar to himself, anyone who wants to build an altar to himself or to any other human being is mocking God, and God will not allow such mocking. To be in this church means to have the courage to be alone with God, to worship alone, and to not worship a person does take courage. The thing that most hinders us from letting God be Lord is that from believing in God is our cowardice. That's why we have Gideon, because he comes to us to the altar of the Most High, the Almighty, and falls to his knees to God alone. It's hard, if you don't understand the context, to miss the point that what Bonhoeffer is talking about flies directly into the face of what the Nazi regime of the day was trying to communicate about the purpose of religion itself. And I want us to have that kind of sensitivity today, because I am convinced that the threat that we have to our freedom, the most important threat that we have to our freedom, is actually the wedding of Christian nationalism to nationalism to Christianity. It is the continuing program of identifying Christianity in particular and religion in general to the program of a nation. And this juxtaposition between worshiping people and worshiping that which transcends any one of us, and yet permeates us, unites us, calls us into community and into being, is important. And lest you think that I'm commenting somehow against atheism or agnosticism or humanism, I am absolutely not. Because I don't believe that humanism is about worshiping the human being. I believe that humanism at its finest understands that the program of living, the life that we live, is worth cherishing. And I don't think that is distinct from the messages that I receive from the prophetic teachings of all of the world's religions. It's something that tries to go beyond the particularities of any one of those traditions to find what is common between them, which is how we become beloved. And so today, in honor of Yom HaShoah, I want us to remember what makes us unique. Remember the power of our gathering in order to resist those forces that would have us worship at the altar of our race or our nation, and give our allegiance to something much higher and much more powerful than that, which is our capacity to transcend both in service to humankind and life itself. Or, as my colleague Scott Alexander once wrote, in a world with so much hatred and violence, we need a religion that proclaims the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In a world with so much brutality and fear, we need a religion that seeks justice and equity and compassion in human relations. In a world with so many persons abused and neglected, we need a religion that calls us to accept one another and encourage one another to spiritual growth. In a world with so much dogmatism and falsehood, we need a religion that challenges us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. In a religion with so much in a world with so much tyranny and oppression, we need a religion that affirms the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process. In a world with so much inequity and strife, we need a religion that strives toward the goal of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. In a world with so much environmental degradation, we need a religion that advocates respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are part. In a world with so much uncertainty and despair, says my colleague, we need a religion that teaches our hearts to hope and our hands to serve. Amen, and blessed be. Would you please join me in our litany this morning, found in your gray hymnals, number 721. In the struggles we choose for ourselves and the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, is right power of our lives well lived. We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. Their voices, their hands, and their hearts. We take them with us and with them choose the deeper path of living. Let us name those who lend strength to our lives. Amen, and blessed be. Would you please join together in our closing hymn, number 1043. We will sing it 3 times through. The first time in Transylvanian. That's the top part 1. The second time, the English translation of it, which is part 2. And then the third time, we'll sing both of those together. It's easy as that. Please rise in body or in spirit. O he, o tseretet, o tseretet, o tbeki, o tbeki, o daldash, o daldash, o dishten, o dishten, o tzutzek, where there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no need. Only there is faith, there is love. Where there is love, there is peace. Where there is peace, there is blessing. Where there is blessing, there is God. Where there is God, there is no Closing words this day are from my friend and colleague of such beloved memory, Laurel Sheridan. Laurel took place in my ordination service. Brookline, Massachusetts in June of 1991. She was Jewish and a Unitarian Universalist minister, and she was the one who looked at me as I was headed into ministry and said, Aaron, give them a sense of your sense of humor before you give them a sense of your intelligence. I think it is the kind of thing that has stayed with me most in my career. Laurel writes, and I remember this day, take from life its coals, not its ashes. Take from life its coals, not its ashes. Fan the flames of love and justice, join hands and hearts in common endeavor, and there will be no limit to what we can achieve together. Amen, and blessed be. And in the lateness of the hour, I invite us to quietly greet each other and to move to fellowship hour as our postlude is played. Once again, beloved, worship in this place is ended, but our service continues. There are seedlings for those of you who would like to have seedlings from your garden, from our garden team, that are in the foyer of the sanctuary. Beautiful.